Hello, everyone, and welcome to this month's Urban and Community IPM webinar. This is a Halloween special on spooky insects. I'm Lauren Fordyce, the Urban IPM educator with UC IPM. Thank you for joining us today. So we are excited to have presenting today Karey Windbiel-Rojas. Karey is the Associate Director for Urban and Community IPM with UC IPM and an Urban IPM advisor for Yolo, Solano, and Sacramento counties. As Associate Director, she provides leadership and coordinates communication and educational efforts to address urban pest issues around homes, structures, landscapes, gardens, schools, and public areas. We are excited to have her presenting today on spooky insects. Karey, you can now share your slides.
Thank you, Lauren. All right, happy Thursday, everyone. And as Lauren said, I'm Karey Windbiel-Rojas from the UC statewide IPM program. And we had a bit of fun with the building of these slides for you today. You know, we're often talking about pests and how to control them, but we wanted to have a fun Halloween themed webinar for you, showcasing some interesting and creepy and spooky kinds of insects. So we put together some slides for you that showcase some of strange features, and some of these are pests, some are beneficials, and some are not even insects, but we wanted to talk about them anyway. All right. So today I'll go over a few different kinds of insects, some that are shown here. So you will see some creepy pictures. I am going to talk about bloodsuckers a little bit, and some things that might make your skin crawl a little bit. But that's what we expect in October, things that make our skin crawl. And I'm not going to be able to cover everything, of course. There's a lot of variability in the insect world and weird and strange behaviors. So first, I'm going to talk about parasites. And parasites are things that we have known that might be living in or on our bodies. But in the insect world, we have parasites that are there to maybe be beneficial as we're controlling pests. And some of these parasites are little wasps. And when I talk to people about this, sometimes they say, oh gosh, wasps, they're going to sting me. But these are really, really small, minute wasps that are not there to sting us or our pets or anything. They use their stingers, if you will, to lay eggs inside of a host. And I'm going to describe how that happens. So I want to distinguish between parasite and parasitoid. A parasite is something that lives on or inside an organism, usually not killing the host. And a parasitoid, which is what I'll cover next, is an organism that lives on or in another organism, another host, and it does eventually kill the host. So in the insect world, we have a lot of these parasitoids that are parasites that rely on another organism, another insect, in order for it to survive. And here you can see just a couple different ones, and I'm going to describe what's happening here. But these parasitoids help us do some pest control by laying their egg and eventually killing a host, where you can see here are aphids, but this happens in scales, psyllids, caterpillars, all kinds of insects have these little parasitoid wasps that will lay their eggs. And so what happens is the female wasp, and it's only the females that lay the eggs, the female wasp uses her little stinger there to lay an egg inside the host. And I'm showing you this picture of how it happens in an aphid. And these are just drawings. So all of this is happening inside the aphid. So the female wasp lays her egg. The egg is inside the aphid. The aphid is continuing to feed on the plant, but the wasp egg hatches, and then you see the larva. So the larva of the wasp is now going to feed on the aphid from the inside. So the aphid's feeding on your plant, the wasp is feeding on the aphid, and eventually the wasp eats all of the inside of the aphid, and now the aphid dies. But because insects have an exoskeleton, the aphid body remains on the plant. And so the wasp larva eats all the parts of the aphid that it can, and then it transitions to its pupal stage, and then it goes through its pupal stage inside the back of the aphid, and you can't see it. And then once it has reached its adult stage, which is dependent on its biology and how much time it takes for the development of that particular species, the pupa now turns into the adult, and the adult emerges out the back of the host and goes on to eat, mate, and repeat this life cycle. So they use these hosts, and they must have them in order to survive. And when the aphid has turned into just the empty exoskeleton, we call those mummies. So this happens both in aphids and, like I said, in scale insects, whiteflies, psyllids, all kinds of different insects. So here you can see the exit hole that a parasitoid has emerged out of this scale insect. And so this is happening inside the scale insect as well. I want to go back and show you a picture. Here's the healthy aphid, and here in the upper right corner is that exit hole. And so when the host has a parasite living in it, it tends to discolor. So if it's a yellow aphid, it might turn kind of this beige tan color. If it's a black aphid, it might turn a different color. If it's a pink aphid or something. And so this happens all the time. And once you learn to recognize it, you can see that this is biocontrol that's happening. And so here's the parasitic wasp that has emerged out of the back of this host. And here you can see the female laying her egg inside the host there. So really creepy, but it happens all the time. There's hundreds of these species of parasitic wasps that have their one host, and they must have that host in order to survive. They can't just go lay their egg in a different species of whatever its preferred host is. And so again, here's the scale. The scale insect will have a predatory, or excuse me, a parasitic wasp that only attacks this species of parasite. And then this whitefly will also have a different kind of wasp that attacks it. So these whitefly nymphs, the black one in the middle is parasitized and the white one is not parasitized. And then the one to the left here has the parasite has already emerged out the back. You can kind of see that opening. So this is happening all over our landscapes and in greenhouses and wherever there's this host and parasite pairing. So I said it does also happen in caterpillars. So here is a parasitic wasp that has a hold of this little caterpillar here. And I will also say that in the parasite relationship, the female seeks out a younger stage of either the caterpillar or the aphid or whatever its host is, because its developing larvae need time to develop inside its host. So if the female laid an egg in an older caterpillar that's about to pupate and move to its next stage, the larva won't have enough food and time to develop. So the female seeks out a younger stage of a caterpillar, and then that caterpillar will eat and grow and eat and grow. Meanwhile, the larva of the wasp is growing inside of it. And so to check if some caterpillar is parasitized or not, we'll move over to the other picture on the right and see that this caterpillar, which is in an older stage, this armyworm, was kind of snapped in half, if you will, and inside was the larva of the wasp growing. And so we can check for biocontrol in that way. If there was no larva in there, you would just see the guts of the caterpillar. But here you can see the larva of the wasp. So this happens again with certain species of parasitic wasp, along with its preferred host. We also have certain flies that are parasites and must rely on a host in order for its development and reproduction to happen. So this fly is a certain fly in the Tachinidae family of flies, and it parasitizes. There's many different species of tachinid flies that have different types of insects that it parasitizes. And so the female will lay her eggs on top of the host. And when the larvae of the fly emerge out of these eggs, they then burrow into the caterpillar host and start to eat it from the inside. And that happens all the time with different caterpillars. These are elm leaf beetles that the tachinid fly is, this particular species is going to lay her eggs on top of those and parasitize them. And then they eat the host from the inside, and really cool. So the ones that I just covered are species of flies and parasitic wasps that usually lay one egg per one host. There are parasitic wasps, though, that lay multiple eggs in their host, and these are known as gregarious reproducers. Gregarious meaning they live in together. And so this type of wasp here that is attacking a navel orangeworm, this female will lay several eggs inside of her host. And then here you can see the larvae that have been removed from the dead body of this caterpillar, and there are multiple in here. And so certain species do that as well. Here is a tobacco hornworm that if you grow tomatoes, you loathe this critter. As pretty as the adult is, the caterpillars eat all kinds of the plant material, including the fruit, and they are really good at camouflaging. Well, to our luck, there is a parasitic wasp that lays multiple eggs inside this host, and they feed on the caterpillar from the inside, and then to pupate, they come out of the body of the caterpillar through all these little holes, and they sort of burst out. And so these are all the pupal cases of this specific parasitic wasp. And so they will pupate hanging off the outside of the caterpillar, and then they will emerge out of these cocoons. And I have a picture of that to show you. So here's a close-up of those parasitic, those pupal cases, and then they just sort of pop the lid and come out. So here is the parasitic wasp that just emerged as an adult from these pupal cases. And there are other species of parasitic wasp that attack other species of caterpillars. So when you see something like this on your plants, if you do, you can now know it's not a fungus, it's not a growth. They are pupal cases of parasitic wasp that ate it from the inside. Really cool. So those are parasites, and I want to also talk about some predatory insects, just sort of in general. There are a lot of different predators that are going to sneak up on their prey and grab it and attack it. And then they have these really long, in some cases, mouth parts where they pierce their prey and they suck out the juices. And so there are examples of this insect to the left, which is called an assassin bug. And so they seek out and they grab their host and then pierce it with these big mouth parts that I'm going to show you in a moment. And then they suck the juices out of their prey. Here also is another piercing and sucking insect that has gotten a hold of a fly, and you can see its mouth part inside the fly, and it's going to suck out those juices. And then there are stink bugs that are also predatory. There are insects that are part of this bug group that are pests on plants, and there are stink bugs that are pests on plants, but there are also stink bugs that are predatory. So this particular stink bug has a hold of an elm leaf beetle and has its mouth parts inside that beetle larva and are sucking out the parts. And they have certain digestive enzymes in their mouth parts that help them digest and break down the food so that they can suck it through their piercing and sucking mouth parts. So I want to show you some close-ups of, this is just a few different kinds of assassin bugs. And I got it from this paper that is an illustrated guide to assassin bug subfamilies. So this is just one particular graphic in that paper where you can see these really thick and big mouth parts, and they keep them sort of tucked under their head and towards their body until they have their prey. And you can also see some of these, their forearms that are used to grab their prey and hold on to their prey, and then they pierce them with this mouth part. And so we're going to talk a little bit when I get into some of the other critters about the piercing and sucking mouth part. But while assassin bugs, right, are predatory on insects, you can get bit by one. And if you do get bit, it stings really bad because they have these really powerful, look how thick these are. So their bites do hurt, but we are not their prey, but they're also telling us by biting us to stay away. So we appreciate these, but we don't want to get, too close. And I am going to talk about kissing bugs in a little bit, which are related to these assassin bugs. So let's move on to some other creepy critters. These are not insects, they are nematodes, which are small roundworms, but they do attack insects. So we have a whole bunch of different insects that some of these beneficial nematodes will attack, and they will use them to also reproduce. And they are naturally occurring, but we can also purchase them for pest control. So there are nematodes that are pests of plants, and they can cause damage to plants. But then there are these predatory nematodes. There are nematodes that attack other nematodes, and there are nematodes that attack insects. So here in the picture on the right, you can see a healthy lawn grub, which is a larva of a certain beetle. And then the one that is more pinkish is infected by nematodes. And so these nematodes are all inside. They are soil dwelling, and so these lawn grubs are soil dwelling. So they get into the host and they start to reproduce and feed on the host, eventually killing it. And then when they are ready to come out, they burst out, and then you've got hundreds, if not thousands, of these little nematodes all in the soil, and then they can move around and infect other hosts. So this makes it good for some natural kind of pest management, biocontrol. This is naturally occurring, but you can also purchase them. And there are certain species that do this. You can't expect all nematodes to be infecting insects, just certain species. Moving on to another kind of non-insect pathogen, but something that infects insects, is this fungus called Beauveria bassiana. It is also a naturally occurring fungus that attacks insects. And once that attacks the insects, it starts to grow inside and outside, and it eventually kills the insect. So here you can see a bagrata bug that has all this fungus growing, and it's obviously dead. And here is a weevil that's been infected by this fungus. And there are other fungi that are naturally occurring that attack insects too, but this one has been studied for use as a pest control tool that we can package this in a way that we can then use it in our gardens and in agriculture to kill the insects that we want to target. So this is available. Another really fun pathogen of insects, and it's not something we can buy, and it's not as common, but we can't talk about spooky insects and Halloween stuff without talking about zombies. So this is a fungus called the zombie ant fungus, and it's a parasitic fungus that infects ants. And the fungus will grow inside the ant and eventually affects its brain, which causes the ant to sort of wander around aimlessly, climbing up. And I've got a little schematic that I borrowed from Wikipedia that explains that the ant picks up the fungus in the forest floor, on leaves and things. The fungus starts to grow inside the ant and eventually gets to its brain, where it takes over the central nervous system. And then it creates these metabolites that cause the ant behavior to be really weird, that wandering around and causing convulsions. And it causes the ant to climb back up to a tree and find a leaf and it eventually affects the ant's mouth, where it clamps on to the leaf so that the ant won't fall off once it's dead, which allows the fungus to grow out of it. And that mandible grip on the leaf is called the death grip. And that is something that the fungus makes the ant do. And so it's really taken over. And so the ant is just kind of a wandering zombie until the fungus grows out. And so here is the fungus that's growing out of the ant. And it grows out and causes weird spores and weird growths. And you can look up videos to see time-lapsed growth of different kinds of species of the fungus. So really cool. Very gross, but really cool. All right. That was all parasites and pathogens and critters that are outside. Now I want to talk about some of the spooky insects and creatures that can be hiding in our homes and what to look for. So we do have sometimes insects that are in our foodstuffs, and we may not notice them because they're really, really small. But what we might notice is when they create webs or holes in our food. And so we want to be careful with the creatures that we might have in our house that spoil our food. So the pictures on the right here are Indian meal moth, Indian meal moth that can very easily come into our houses on packages of food, and they sometimes come in as eggs or larvae, and they are hidden inside the food and we may not see it. So it's always a good idea to store your food in tightly sealed containers so that if something is infested, it doesn't continue to further grow. Here on the left are some weevils and beetles that can come into our house on infected foods and can start to consume our grains, our beans, and various things. And we may not know it, and you might be eating them. And while it usually won't hurt you at all, some people do get sensitive to some of the hairs that some of these insects can have. But you know, you can inspect them, you can freeze your food. There's lots of things you can do to keep the pests out of your food. And we'll share some resources with you after the webinar is over. So lots of different pantry pests. Another kind of creepy insect that can be in our homes are carpet beetles. Now the carpet beetle adult, which is a cute little beetle, feeds on pollen outdoors on our plants, but the life stage that is in our house is this creepy looking critter, which is the larval stage of the carpet beetle. This carpet beetle is the variegated carpet beetle. There are other kind of types of carpet beetles. These are also called dermestids. And so they are problems that can really go unnoticed in our house until we find the shed skins or we find these larvae. And so here is a picture of some yarn and craft art, child's art. And in the middle, you can see all the little larvae of the carpet beetle. So they really go unnoticed when you're not, looking at some of these saved art pieces from your kids or your grandkids. But carpet beetles don't just eat carpet, they don't just eat yarn. They will also feed on any kind of insect collection that you might have. There are really big problems in museums because they feed on fur and feathers. So if you have any feather pieces on hats or masks or anything, you might find carpet beetles in there too. And they can also be associated with a pet. They don't feed on the pet, but they could feed on the fur that's where the pet lives. So they can really go unnoticed in our house until you start to maybe see the adults flying or see kind of a big mess in stored items. So keep an eye out for those. Another kind of spooky and gross insect are flies. Nobody really likes flies. There are many different flies that can live and breed in our homes. and they can carry diseases. So houseflies can transmit diseases to humans and food. Some of the pathogens like Salmonella or E. coli. So we don't really want flies around our homes, especially not the house flies, because they fly on and land on lots of different materials, and that's how they can move bacteria around. And the females can produce a lot of eggs that reproduce in a very short time. So they could be found in, this is a cat food dish with some standing water, and you can see some of the larvae and the pupae that were just unnoticed. So they might land on the cat food and then land on your food or your dog food. They can land on feces, and they can carry bacteria from feces to our food. They can be in our compost bins, our indoors or outdoors, garbage cans, and all different places, landing on pet food dishes. So we really do want to keep the flies out and any kind of filth flies out. And the reason why we talk about flies in the spooky insect talk is because they have a very interesting way of feeding. Some of you may have heard that flies vomit on their food and then suck it back up. And you're right. It's not exactly vomit, but it is digestive enzymes that they put out on a mouth part that is called a sponging mouth part. So think about a wet sponge and just throwing that down on a surface and then sucking up anything that's on that surface and then digesting it and then doing it again. So we have this short video to show you how they feed and what that mouth part looks like. So it's got its mouth part there and it throws it down, kind of sucking the juices, and it brings it up, brings it down, and just moves around. So both its legs can carry bacteria and that sponging mouth part. So there it is, pulled back up, and then it'll throw it back down, and it lands on our food, lands on feces, lands on all kinds of stuff. So really interesting, but kind of gross. All right, another creepy insect that we don't want in our homes, and most people don't like to even think about them, are cockroaches. There are indoor cockroaches and outdoor cockroaches. The outdoor cockroaches, we can just sort of leave them alone. They are in their outdoor habitat, but they do wander in. And cockroaches tend to be around moist areas and also around trash or debris, so they can also carry bacteria. They also have a protein in their bodies that can trigger asthma or cause asthma in young children. And so we don't want cockroaches in our homes, and we definitely don't want the kind of cockroaches that breed in our homes. Many cockroaches do develop pretty quickly, and they can have a lot of babies quickly. So that's another reason to try to keep them out of the homes. But here in this top picture, you see a female cockroach with an egg case. So cockroaches develop in an egg case. The female doesn't lay individual eggs and spread them out. All the eggs are within this egg case. And the certain species drop the egg case in an area where they frequent, and some species carry that egg case around in the female's body until it's time for the larvae to hatch out. So here are 4 different egg cases from 4 different species of cockroaches. And when they do hatch out, if you are ready for it, the case opens like a purse, like a little clutch purse, and then out from there are all these little babies. There are about 40 cockroach nymphs in this one egg case. And so they will come out, they will scatter, they will start to feed and crawl over things, and they can develop pretty quickly. So we want to keep cockroaches out of the house, as I said, but there's really only one main cockroach in California that we have to worry about developing in the house, and that's the German cockroach, which is shown right here. It looks really big right here, but it's actually pretty small. It's kind of an olive colored cockroach with these 2 lines on its little head covering there. So this is the most common indoor species. We find it a lot in shared housing and multi-unit housing, and it likes warm and humid areas that are dark and secluded. So we don't often see them unless we come out at night and see them out. So they like to be in kitchen and food prep areas and in bathrooms where there's moisture and also hiding places. So a very spooky insect that we don't want around. Now, I'm going to talk about spiders a little bit, and spiders are, of course, not insects. They are arachnids, but we can't have a Halloween webinar without talking about spiders too. There are so many different spiders in California. Some prefer to be indoors, some are mainly outdoors, and some of these you know, and some you may have just heard of. But here is the black widow, and you can see the black widow has that hourglass on her lower abdomen, and the female is black with these markings. The male is actually more of a brown color and has different markings on it. So it's the female, and here are some of the egg cases that the female will lay. So there's a bunch of little eggs inside each of these cases, and the female stays around and protects them. But even though we don't like having black widows around, they are predators. So here you can see the spider, it has a hold of an insect, so they can help us with our pest control, but a lot of people consider spiders as pests too. This cute face right here, this is a wolf spider. And a lot of people just have instant fear about spiders, but again, spiders are predators and they do help us with pest control, and most spiders are not going to bite us. The black widow, and there is now a brown widow in California, those are venomous and they can bite us as a defense, and can cause us to get ill, but most other spiders are not going to bite you. And there are these cellar spiders that are indoors. Sometimes people call them daddy long legs, but they are called cellar spiders. And there's a myth out there that their fangs are too small to actually bite us, but they're very venomous. That's not true. Um, their mouth parts are small. They won't bite us, but they're not venomous. And then the one myth that hopefully all of you know, but I will state it again. This is the brown recluse spider. Brown recluses are not found in California. We do not have the habitat that allows them to thrive. So all the stories of people, you know, their neighbors, doctor's son, whatever, was bit by one, and, you know, had this necrosis. It was not a brown recluse spider. Usually when somebody has an infection, it's because of bacteria that got in there from some sort of bite or even some sort of, you know, skin lesion, but not the brown recluse spider. So I'm going to take that one off there. It does not occur in California. But we do have some really cute spiders. This is a jumping spider. And as we said, for pest control, while people are afraid of spiders, they do help us do some pest control. So let's show you this cute little guy and what he's doing. Oh, and it has music. So catching an aphid. And then he notices the camera. And is just chewing on the aphid, doing some pest control for us. What's not to love? And then he gets tired of being watched. But you know, we want to appreciate our spiders and know that they are there to help us do pest control. All right, let's talk about some bloodsuckers. And these are also insects that you may find in the house. So bed bugs. We've all heard about bed bugs lately for many, many years. That sleep tight, don't let the bed bugs bite was just sort of an empty threat. But bed bugs have resurged in their population around humans. They've been around since the time of cavemen and even before. But bed bugs are becoming resistant to some of the chemical treatments that we've historically used. and there's a lot of other reasons why they are thriving. But for the context of our spooky insects, bed bugs are insects. They do not fly. They don't have wings, so that's good. They don't jump the way fleas can jump, but they do crawl, and they are really good hitchhikers. So they can occur in any type of hotel, motel, dormitory, senior living. They can be in any kind of living situation. They are not just associated with clutter and filth. Anyone can pick them up. So we want to let people know about bed bugs, and to inspect any kind of furniture that you might bring in if you are buying used furniture, or bringing something in that someone had discarded. They are really good at hiding, but you can see bed bugs with the naked eye. They have a life cycle that you can see with the naked eye. They develop as an egg, which you can see in this top picture. These little white capsules are egg cases where the bed bug has already come out. And then they develop through 5 instars before becoming an adult. And I'll show you the life cycle in a moment. But bed bugs only feed on blood, and they really only feed on human blood. So these are pests of us. And just like the assassin bug that I showed earlier, they also have piercing and sucking mouth parts that they pierce into our skin and pull out the blood. And we will show you some feeding in just a moment. So here is someone's hand. That is a gloved hand pulling one of the ribs of a mattress. And all of this is bed bug adults and bed bug nymphs and eggs. And all the black that you see here is their feces. So they feed on blood, they digest it, and then their feces is black little smears. And so you can see all the black that's on this mattress too. So bed bugs are not something we want to have in our homes, obviously. And one good thing about them is they are not known to vector any human diseases, any human pathogens. So they are just feeding on our blood and causing itching and, discomfort. All right, so here's a short video to show you. Here is a bed bug that is an immature stage, and it has its mouth parts into someone's skin. So here is skin, and it is going to feed. And it's a time-lapse video. So you can see all that blood rushing into its body, filling it up. And as they feed and fill up with blood, their body elongates a little bit. So let me show you the life cycle. So here's a close-up. You can see the mouth part are pierced into the skin looking for a vein. And when the bed bug feeds, its body elongates. So to the left is an unfed adult male, and here is an adult female. When the adult male feeds, its body elongates, so it's filled with blood, and the female's does too. And you can see it's almost twice as long. And so the female will lay eggs, the eggs hatch into the instars. So the lighter colored instar in each one here is unfed. And then this is what it looks like when it's fed, that red arrow. So they do look a little different when they're fed versus unfed. So knowing to recognize them and knowing what they're there for is going to be helpful for keeping them out. Another bloodsucker that we find in our homes sometimes, usually associated with a pet, are fleas. And fleas are also wingless, but they do jump very well. And they feed on blood of whatever their host is. So in our homes, we typically have dogs or cats, but there are fleas that can live on rabbits and possums and deer and other kinds of organisms. So there are different fleas. One of the reasons that we are concerned about fleas is that they can carry diseases. And fleas that were on rats are responsible for the bubonic plague. And so they were the disease carriers. So we certainly don't want to be bit by fleas, because then makes us itchy and uncomfortable, but they can carry diseases too. So we want to be mindful of that. Here is the kissing bug, also called a cone-nosed bug. This is the insect that I said was similar to the assassin bug. They're in the same family of insects that's called Reduvidae, and they have those really nicely formed piercing and sucking mouth parts. The difference, though, between a kissing bug and an assassin bug that is a insect feeder is the kissing bugs, their bite doesn't hurt. Their mouth parts are a bit more slender than a predatory assassin bug, because the kissing bugs, they are attracted to saliva, and so they feed on people around their mouth. And they don't want you to feel it. They often do it when you're sleeping. And so their mouth parts are not designed to cause us pain. And we talk about the kissing bug because, yes, it is feeding on blood, but it is also a carrier of Chagas disease. And Chagas disease is rare in California, but it's a possibility. But you get Chagas disease not from the mouth part of the kissing bug. The disease, the bacteria is actually caused by the poop, the defecation of the kissing bug. And if the kissing bug poops in the wound where it just fed, that's how the Chagas disease can be spread. But again, in California, it is rare. And even if you do find a kissing bug and are bit by one, it doesn't mean that you will get Chagas disease. It's the feces that carries that disease. All right. Let's see what else we have. Our last bloodsucker is, of course, mosquitoes. Mosquitoes, we all have had mosquito issues. The female is the only one that feeds on blood. The male is there to mate with the female, but the female will put her piercing, sucking mouth part into our skin and will, almost like an oil pump, will drill into your skin, look for a vein, and start sucking out the contents. So here you can see this particular species has blood in her abdomen and her mouth part is sticking into the person's skin. This one down here is drilling into the skin so that it can access the blood, and then its body will fill up. So this is a screenshot of a really cool video that we don't have time to show you, but there is a publication series called Deep Look, and they've got some really great close-ups of how the mouth parts get into our skin and how they suck out the blood. So I'll show you a link to those videos shortly. But for all of these different spooky insects and pests that we've covered today, you can read more information on the UCIPM website in the Home, Garden, Turf, and Landscape Pests. And that will take you to this page that you can look at pests that bite, sting, or injure, or some like those carpet beetles that you might find in fabric, the pantry pests that might be there, and even some of the things I didn't talk about today, like rats that are potentially problematic in our homes. And we've got these great publications that you can access online or in print on any of the pests that we talked about today. And you can find the parasites and the beneficials in our natural enemies gallery, which is over here. And you can see which parasitoids are going to attack certain species of aphids or scales or whitefly, and we have a huge list there. And so here's that link to the Deep Look, and when we send the email out to you with some of the resources, we'll send this link as well. But they have some really great close-ups of lots of different things, but I took some snapshots of the insect related. So how a kissing bug gets full of your blood, and there's one on the flea and how it jumps and other kinds of really fun things, the assassin bugs and kissing bugs and ladybugs, which I didn't talk about. So that is it for our Halloween special. And if you have any questions, we have a good amount of time for any questions. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Carey, for that great presentation.